tell you a bit about myself. I basically studied ICSE in Bishop Cotton Boys School, Bangalore till the 10th grade, after which I moved on to Vidyashilp Academy and I did my 11th and 12th there. In the 11th and 12th grade, I took part a lot in Model United Nations competitions and debates in school. And these sort of helped me inculcate an interest in law, because in Model United Nations, I did a lot of legal agendas where we had to research into the legal aspect. And this I would believe helped me inculcate an interest in law. I definitely done a lot of research. I'd read up on the NLUs, definitely the top 6 NLUs, and after discussing with my friends, I reached a consensus that their packages and their placements are on par with the IITs. And for this reason, the whole what if it's not on par with engineering wasn't really an issue, and I was happy to move on with law. I had considered other options, of course, but subjects in the science field never really interested me. Stuff like engineering, architecture never really invoked my interest. And from the beginning, it was more or less law. I decided on law in about 12th grade. And I'd approached a few coaching centers in Bangalore initially to find out more about the CLAT examination. And once I found out about the pattern, I was definitely happy and I thought I'd move on with law. Well, one thing to note about the CLAT examination is that it's an aptitude paper, which is very different from the kind of examinations you have in schools or your IIT entrances. Because rather than mugging up fact after fact, there's a lot of other aspects that come into play. For example, your time management, the way you approach studies. So all these side effects make the difference when it comes to an aptitude test. And I thought this would work out very well for me. Well, first, to give you some general tips, something that I did that might not work for everyone, but it will definitely work for a few people, is finding a study partner. This also really helps when it comes to motivation, because while I was reaching Jan and Feb, I was feeling pretty demotivated. That drive to study was going. So what I did was I got together with a friend who was also writing CLAT. We would meet every day. We would solve math and logic together. And solving this alone is rather dry, but when you do it with a friend, it's much easier. Also, we would analyze mocks together. So finding a study partner is definitely one helpful aspect. Secondly, if possible, I would advise you all to find a mentor, someone you know who's already in law school, because they will not only help with preparation strategies and tips, but they will also keep you motivated. They'll give you that drive to study by reminding you that there's a law school waiting for you. Third aspect is doing mocks. Now, one thing that people always do is they do mocks, they look at their score and they leave it at that. But that is a very, very wrong approach, because the key is analyzing your mocks. What I would do is after every mock, I would analyze it. I would identify, for example, when I did my first mock, I identified that syllogisms was something I was very weak at. And so I wrote it down and I worked on it, and then I was completely thorough in syllogisms. So analysis is very important. Moving on to a sectional approach. Firstly, I'll cover GK because it is definitely one of the most important sections, and in my opinion, the make or break section. It constitutes 1/4 of your paper. Firstly, regarding current affairs, the majority of the people approach current affairs using the newspaper, and this is definitely a good approach, but it does not work for everyone. For example, for me, I did not like the idea of sitting and reading a newspaper, skimming through large passages and segregating what's needed. Hence, what I did was I used a lot of online PDFs from websites. There are quite a few websites where you can use online PDFs, such as GK Today. Moving on to static GK, one thing you need to do is cover all the core essentials. For example, there are several important points in geography and history. There are headquarters of international organizations. There are several core topics which once you cover, you're more or less good for static GK. Moving on to legal. First, I'll cover the legal reasoning aspect, which normally comes for around 35 marks. For legal reasoning, the core thing is that there is a very limited pool from which they draw questions. It's not like there are unlimited questions which they can frame, because most questions are based on past case laws. So once you do enough practice and expose yourself to enough number of questions, you're more or less set. Since I'd done this in this year's CLAT, about 80% of the legal reasoning questions I'd already seen before. Maybe the facts may be twisted a bit with different names, but the core facts are the same. Hence, expose yourself to a large number of questions. One of the most important aspects of legal reasoning is torts, which is one aspect of law. The thing about torts is all their questions are based on past case laws, past case law of the UK and India. So if you read up on all these case laws, you will realize that all their questions are made directly from there. And the case laws will also have a judgment, and the answer is based on that judgment. So if you read up on these case laws, you're more or less set for torts. Moving on to static GK, which of late has been coming for about 10 to 15 marks in the CLAT paper. People this is a very make or break part of the legal section, because this is something that's often not considered by people. People always do well in the legal reasoning section, but the legal GK part of the legal reasoning section is not given importance. Hence, do cover all your parts, schedules, and articles of the Constitution, important committees, important people in legal history, and you should be good. Moving on to logic. The thing about logic is there's not many tips and not much that can be taught, because it's more of a practice based section. But the key that you need to keep in mind in logical reasoning is time. Often students, they solve their exercises, they think they're good, and they move on. But the key in logical reasoning is time, because the time you save here can be utilized in other sections such as comprehension, where you need to put in more time. Math is something that a lot of students fear, and they often do not even consider the section for this reason, but that is what makes it a make or break section, because majority of the students don't even do math. The thing about math is, granted, there will be a few difficult sums. I'm definitely accepting that, and there will be a few sums which a lot of people can't solve. But the thing about math is, there are these chapters called the core 10 chapters. For example, you have profit and loss, you have compound interest, you have time, speed, distance. You have these core chapters, and once you're done with these core chapters, you can easily score a 14 to 16 in math. Hence, what I would advise you to do for math is cover these core chapters which have already been covered in 10th grade, so that you can secure at least a 14. After you reach the stage of a 14 or a 15, then you begin the uphill journey of the more difficult sums. But at least do these core chapters to secure a 14. In English, what I would suggest you do is work on each type of question one at a time. For example, 1 month covers something like parajumbles, which has been seen to come in almost every CLAT except this year. The thing about parajumbles is, once you understand the way it works, once you understand the keywords which you need to identify, it's 5 very easy marks. Moving on to comprehension. For comprehension, what I did, I was personally weak at comprehension, very weak, because I don't like reading long passages. It just does not work with me. So one thing that I would do for comprehension is, I would make sure I have enough time for it left at the end. I would do all my other sections quicker, such as legal, which I'm strong at, and I would leave a good 20 minutes just to read the comprehension over and over again to understand it. So for those of you all who are weak at comprehension, definitely leave some extra time for it. Learn all the different types of styles that are asked. For example, a lot of questions will say, what is the style of the author? And you have questions like, the answers are like sanguine, lampooning and stuff, but a lot of people don't understand the meaning of these words, and I too didn't understand it at the beginning. So make a list of all these styles, understand their different meanings, and that can easily get you 1 mark. Another type of question that is commonly asked in English is the idioms and phrases question. So go through important lists. And lastly, Latin maxims. They do ask Latin maxims in the English section for some reason. And this is a very easy place to score, because with Latin maxims, again, it's like legal reasoning questions. There's a very fixed pool from which they ask. There'll be a lot of important questions, and once you do those, you're good. Definitely, the test series was extremely helpful, not only because of the quality of questions, but several things. For example, the platform was very helpful, the quality of questions was helpful, and the key to any mock is the analysis. So the way the analysis was presented also was very helpful. And something that CLAT Possible has is something known as the right to query, which gives you a platform to clarify your doubts online. So that was an extremely, as a whole, it was a very comprehensive mock test. So it helped in all aspects. Moving on to a few other general tips which may sound silly at first but do definitely help in the long run. For starters, something that I would do is, every time I would get demotivated, I would change my wallpaper on my computer to a picture of NLS. Again, this sounds extremely stupid, but I know a lot of people who've done this, and it does give you that last bit of drive that you need. So whether it's going on online and stalking publications of all these colleges, or just changing pictures, that definitely works. I know a lot of people who can survive without sleep and can work well without sleep, but I personally was a person who couldn't. So if you're such a person, do not ever compromise on sleep, because sleep does give you that extra work efficiency at the end of the day. And lastly, one of the probably the most important point in my opinion, is staying calm before the CLAT. Back in the day when you had paper-based exams, you would enter probably half an hour to 20 minutes before the paper. But what they did this year for me in my center particularly is, they made us enter at 1:20 and the paper was at 3 o'clock. So for 1 hour 40 minutes, all we could do is sit in our cubicle and stare at a computer with our face on it. That's all you could do. You had a timer and you had your picture. So for 1.5 hours, if you do that, that really starts playing on your mind. So this is something you need to start preparing yourself for now itself. You need to realize that there will come a day just during the most important exam of your life where you'll have to sit in a cubicle and stare at your picture for 1.5 hours with nothing else to do. So this is something you need to prepare yourself for, because if you panic or if you lose it in these 1.5 hours, you mess up the entire exam. Hence, remaining calm during this period is extremely important. Well, I definitely haven't zeroed in on what field I want to pursue after undergrad, and I'm sure that within the first month of law school itself, what I want to do will change. But I do have an open mind. My point is to try out everything that law school offers and then decide what works best for me. But if I have to tell you what interests me now, that would probably be international humanitarian law, again, because of the MUNs, the Model United Nations that I did. And also something that I researched upon a few months back was sports law, because it's something that is not spoken about a lot, but it's a very interesting field because I'm personally very interested in sports like watching football and stuff.